Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bust and Beyond podcast. So, I am very pleased to say I'm being joined today by Corwyn Melette. Corwyn, welcome.
Well, hey, Robin. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's good to have you. It's so nice. One of the things I really like about this podcast is I speak to people all over the world. And just prior to going on, we've been discussing the weather, which is we have very different outlooks on that.
Very true. Very true. Perspective. Perspective.
Perspective,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I think actually in the UK it reached 40 a couple of years ago. That's Celsius, which is pretty high by anyone's standards, I think. But it was just for
Oh,
one
yeah.
day. Yeah, we almost
Well,
we almost melted.
well, look, we get that constant. The heat index, unfortunately, in recent years, has gotten us. The heat index is 110, 115 in my area, and there's other parts of the U.S. that you could achieve that just in dry heat, let alone a heat index. So, yes, sir. You can keep that over there, and I'll try to send some of what we got to you.
Absolutely. So, Colin, tell me a little bit about you and tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and kind of your journey into business, your journey into what you're doing now.
So, for this version of the story, Robin, I'll start by saying I'm a serial entrepreneur. Um, so I am a real estate broker, company owner. Actually own an office in totality and co-own another real estate office. And investor. Acquiring rental properties. Short-term rental. That's the next project that I'm in the process of acquisition on. Um, and then outside of that, there's some other ventures and interests that I'm a little fancy too as well. But the short version, condensed version, is what I started with, which is I'm a serial entrepreneur. As far as what got me here, I could go back, and I'll have to go back, quote unquote, to childhood. Most of us, a lot of us that are business owners, at some point in time, we started out young with, cutting grass and or doing some other type of, yard work or whatever it is. I didn't have and wasn't in an area where I could put the lemonade stand out, so we had to do a little bit more work. Um, but that got me later on to what was a very short endeavor, as I grew up around my great grandfather who was a carpenter. Very instrumental, raised me, and so after his passing, and actually while he was sick, I would kind of run some of the stuff that he did. He was a hog farmer, so I would help take care of the hogs. He was doing carpentry work. He had a guy that worked with him, so I would kind of run and supervise that at times. When he passed, I actually tried that myself, to continue to try to run that. But my first individual, if you will, foray, or what I call my significant foray into entrepreneurship, I started a trucking company. Um, I was about 19, 20 years old, maybe. I think maybe about 2021, possibly somewhere in there. I forget the exact age. And I bought an 18 wheeler because I had an affection for trucks. Had friends that had kind of started getting in that arena. And so I bought an 18 wheeler. That was my first foray into entrepreneurship. That failed miserably. Um, but the lessons were learned from it. And, fast forward a number of years later, I continued on the sales. And fast forward a number of years later, I got into real estate, and I've been in real estate over 20 years.
I think the point you said, lessons were learned, and I think that's really important.
Mhm.
I think I can't remember discussed this on podcasts before, but I think the America's attitude towards failure and the UK's attitude is slightly different. And I
Mhm.
think Americans have a very positive attitude towards failure. It's just part of the thing, whereas we tend to look down on it a little bit. It's a bit like success, the way I see it.
Mhm.
And if anyone wants to correct me on this, please do. But in America, if you see a Ferrari going past, people's general attitude was, "Wow, haven't they done well? That's really good." where in the UK you see a Ferrari go past, and the general attitude is effing, idiot, and that's kind of, I think that kind of sums it up. That's the way I see it. I'm not 100% sure that's right, but definitely, it feels that way.
That's fair. So that's very fair, Robin. That is an interesting observation. In comparison, I love that. One of the things that I probably, and I don't know the UK like that, but keep talking about it because I'm coming. But but what
You're
I would,
welcome anytime.
well, I appreciate it. Thank you for the invite. So what I will say is that sometimes that tenacity, it's kind of like if you're going to jump, then, granted, you may not build a safety net, but you should at least have a reasonable idea as to how far the ground is or the bottom is, whether it's the ground or whatever it is, before you get to whatever point, if you will, of impact. And not necessarily that you should jump and look to go splat, but jump and, okay, well, look, if I fall, okay, I might get broken up, bruised up, but I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna do this again. I'll heal whatever that needs to be, whatever it needs to look like. So that's probably one of the things, that when I talk about and share these pieces of the story that I kind of focus on, is that you're just gonna get up and go do it again. So what's the worst thing that can happen? And even if you go again, as the podcast is bust, even if you go bust, okay, well, look, if you found your way here, you can find your way back to here and know where you went wrong, and you can continue on.
You absolutely can, and I think even that kind of that, yes, too late in life. It never is. There's some great examples of people that have started very late, mainly American actually. So I mean, the founder of McDonald's, he was in his
Mhm.
50s, and then you've got Kentucky Fried Chicken. They're all fast food chains, aren't they? But you know,
Making me hungry.
there's always a route back, and I absolutely see that. I noticed we've got something else in common. My father was also a carpenter,
My God.
so he built the business, my business that failed. But
Hmm.
he started as a carpenter, understood construction. Carpentry is great because in construction, a carpenter will actually get involved in every part of the building process. So from shuttering concrete to finishing a house. So it's
Hmm.
a great trade to have. I never had a trade really. I did a bit of groundworks, so I
Hmm.
could bench a manhole, if you know what that means. But yeah, but that was about it. But I have got huge respect for carpenters, and there's some fantastic ones still in this country. And yeah, I think it's a great trade to have.
That's and a takeaway for me. That's the element that stuck with me. A lot of the stuff, and I tell people as I got into real estate that, the stuff that he did. So I was always in and out of house, round houses. I jokingly say it, I mean, but I mean it. I'm a big guy now. But as a kid, I used to be under houses, on roofs, in attics, all through these houses. Look at me now, you say, nah, you ain't do that. But yeah, I did. I learned at, at that point a degree about construction, which helps me in my business now. But my grandfather also, he oversaw properties for people. He, collected rents, made repairs, did maintenance, handled things. He was essentially a property manager. That's essentially what he was. And that's the piece of the business that I took. I took that component and helping people and working with people, providing service to people more so than the actual hands-on construction piece. I've co-owned. That's also something I've done. Didn't make mention of. I've co-owned two home restoration businesses, excuse me, in my adult life, outside of my own, if you will, foray. Because I had a partner, we had a business for about 2-3 years together, and then I had took another partner later and started another one. That one, failed miserably, as well, probably after about 6 to 12 months or what have you. Um, you know, because I'm one of these people. I've learned that the lane that if you stick to that lane, and if you have a partner, if they stick to their lane, then the two of you can get down the road quickly, efficiently. But if you get into this lane, or they get into this lane, then it all gets all mucked up, and that's when you have a problem, and it's not going to work.
Well, Corwyn, if you decide to go into, remodeling, or we call it contracting again, just give me a call. It's what I teach. So I teach people how to run a successful contracted business. And it's a lot to do with, really having an eye on quality, but also understanding what your client wants, and kind of being very proactive in dealing with your clients. And we have, I'm sure you have the same phrase, cowboy builders.
Well,
Yeah.
we got some other colorful ones, but yeah, that's one.
Yeah, so we use cowboy builders as a phrase. So one of the best bands I saw out recently was "You've Tried the Cowboys, Now Use the Indians."
Ah.
Um, so that was some Asians that were run a contracting business, and it's great. It's great bit of advertising. But yeah, we have cowboy builders, and we have loads of programs about how builders do a bad job, and so clients kind of straight away they're in fear. They're in fear
Hmm.
that they're employing a cowboy builder and don't know about it. So it's
Hmm.
kind of quite it's a difficult thing, really. So the other thing you were talking about was, so being a realtor, selling houses, basically.
Hmm.
So we call them estate agents over here. We don't think highly of them, but we call them estate agents. There's some very good ones, by the way. And it's interesting because the buy-to-let market, which is kind of about investing in property and then renting it,
Hmm.
it's taken a bit of a knock in this country at the moment. We've got a new government in. The government are pretty anti the private side of the market. They don't really understand it.
Hmm.
They'd rather that the government owned property and rented it out rather than private landlords, because private landlords, like cowboy builders, have got a bad name, though some of them are really good. They're really, really, they look after their tenants, and, they look for a long-term lease. Um, but the other thing is the tax environment around what they call buy-to-lets isn't good at the moment. So
Hmm.
you don't, if you own it privately, particularly, you can't claim back your costs associated with the property. So you have to pay for those out of tax paid money. We have a income
Hmm.
tax here,
Hmm.
and it's not the best environment. I think the trouble is the government have lost sight of the fact they need private landlords because there's just not
Hmm.
enough housing.
Hmm.
But the idealists, kind of who are quite, I suppose, in our country, left wing,
Hmm.
they seem to think that if we had no private landlords, then it released all these houses onto the open market, which means people could buy houses. Over in the UK, there's a shortage of housing.
Hmm.
Um, don't think that's true because people aren't always in a position to buy a house. So that, but it's interesting. I think what I'm alluding to, the reason I kind of grabbed this subject was it's really interesting to hear the difference between the UK um, and the US, because in the UK it's seen as a very good investment property, and it's seen as there's lots and lots of property gurus who teach you how to invest in property. Lots of them don't know what they're doing, but there's lots out there who charge a big whack for teaching how to invest in property.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not that easy to make money out of property. It's not as easy as it was. How's it?
Hmm.
What's it like in America? Because in America, you haven't got a shortage of housing, have you?
So yes, we do. So,
Okay.
shortages, obviously, Robin, and I'm fairly positive listeners, get shortages, essentially supply and demand. Is there a shortage in the entire US? No. But people migrate. They migrate towards, now they're migrating towards the coast again. When, things are not, people kind of, go a little bit more central, because we have a abundance of, in real estate school, they teach this thing, abundance and scarcity. Even though we have an abundance of land mass in the US, there is scarcity where people want to be. So the locations where people want to be is more congested, and so there's housing shortages. People move in and migrate to these areas. Where I live in the Charleston region, low country, if you will, of South Carolina, that is one of the tangents that we're always on. We have a shortage of housing, therefore we have affordability issue because supply and demand drives pricing up, etc. I found interesting what you were talking about um, as far as investment. So, in our markets, especially in our desirable areas or parts of the country, cities. Our investor market is, investors are picking up homes just like this, and some are flipping, some are holding, for sale. Our government, thank God, at this point, is not involved in that at all. They're not, they're not, doing that. An investor, taxation wise, can acquire a property, concurrently under tax code, can depreciate the value of that property over a time period, have deductions related to, expenses for the property, et cetera, all the things that seemingly are contrary to what you guys are experiencing over there. So that is interesting to hear that out loud, because some are concerned that's at some point in time what our country may get to based upon the trajectory that we're on.
Maybe. I mean, I think our fear at the moment is a couple of things that are happening under the new government. I'm not saying the new government are all bad. The old government weren't very good, so the new one doesn't have to do particularly well to be good. But I think the two fears are rent capping, so the government dictating what you can charge as rent, which I think is, that goes away from capitalism and a common market and supply and demand. And the other thing is a nasty little tax called capital gains tax. So as a private individual, if your property rises in value and then you sell it, you've got to pay tax on the difference. And it looks as if they're going to put it up because they see that as being only rich people have capital gains. The problem with that, and it was there was a fellow on TikTok that I do watch some TikTok. I've got to be honest. There was a fellow on TikTok who really summed up well, which, when you're investing, either whether shares or property or anything else, you're making a risk. You're taking a big risk. You're putting money that you've earned and paid tax on, and you're using it to invest. So if they try and tax you anywhere near the rate of income tax in the UK, it's unfair because if you make a loss, the government don't kind of give you money back as a private individual. So really the tax rate ought to be to encourage people to invest, because if, let's say, I wanted to go into development in this country, I'd need an investor. And it might be a private investor rather than the business. If that private investor is going to be taxed 50% of what he invests, or what he gains, either he's going to be asking for a lot more profit or he's just not going to do it. So by
Mhm.
putting capital gains tax up, they're stifling investment. And I think often some political parties, or, and it happens, I'm sure it happens in the States, does here,
Mhm.
get very blinkered to, the damage they can cause. But actually, I'm going talking about tax. Florida, I understand there's no income tax in Florida. Is that right, or have I misread something?
So there are some states that don't charge or don't tax certain incomes. So like for example, South Carolina doesn't tax certain retirement incomes. There's other states that don't tax, vehicle, as far as property. They only tax real estate, instead. So that kind of moves around. Florida, I am not certain. I know there's something they don't tax. I don't think it's income. I think they tax all income, or at least,
Okay,
but I think it's retirement income they probably don't tax,
okay,
because South Carolina, as well as Florida, definitely is a haven for retirees. People retire and move, quote unquote, down south to Florida, for the beautiful weather, minus the
yeah.
storm season, all the time.
Well, the only place I have been in America is Florida. I've been to Florida twice,
Mm.
um, and it was interesting. So Disney World obviously was
Oh,
our aim, but went to Clearwater as well.
mm.
Um, just the food so different from here. I was really, really desperate for a vegetable.
Oh,
There are lots of salads,
Uh-huh.
but it just needs to be bread and meat, bread and meat, bread and meat, or and fruit, plenty of fruit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but that's the thing, I suppose, when you're eating in restaurants, that's what's you offered, and it's not necessarily reflective on what people are eating at home. And
That's fair.
when I go abroad, I like to eat locally. I like to eat local food. I like to, really kind of. So one of my favourite countries to go to is Portugal. So,
Okay.
and if I go to anywhere in Portugal, I look for the restaurants where the Portuguese are going because they're going to be good.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah, but no, so I've been to Florida twice, but I would like to come back to America. If anyone out there, I've got a few American listeners, has a speaking gig and they're willing to pay for my transport, I'll be interested in having a chat to them about it.
I love it. I
That was
love
a
it.
that was a full out advert for myself. So,
Look here.
but
I
yeah,
get it.
so yeah, but no, it's a very interesting place, and we were talking about pre our pre meet pre the podcast. We were talking
Hmm.
about the politics at the moment, which is ever so interesting. The whole world's looking at your politics and getting interested in them. In most probably, people who aren't interested in the politics in their own country.
So, unfortunately, politics in our country have become the new soap opera.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It used to be that, people would, take sides, if you will, in General Hospital or Days of Our Lives and all those other shows that, are daytime, television, again, coined soap operas, if you will. And that would be the discussion, the argument, this person cheated on this person and so forth and this and that, all that, whatever. Politics, unfortunately, has become that for the everyday American. People are, in my opinion, are choosing, sides based upon, their feelings about either candidate, whether it be for or against, whatever that may look like. It is, it is, it's reaching a point of, for me personally, it's nauseating to even try to watch and keep up with. Um, it's all accusation, it's all pointing fingers. It is seldom about to be frank, it's seldom about the people. It's seldom about who you're trying to help serve and what your policies are in order to help and serve them.
But wouldn't it be wonderful if the president was a character like Martin Sheen played in The West Wing? Who was, all knowing, always trying to get the right side of things. Was honest. Had the people's. Will that ever happen again? Do you think? I mean, has that ever happened?
So it has, and granted, I'm older now, so my views, have changed significantly. Um, but what I will say is that we've had that in politics around the world seemingly forever. That there was more calm, there was unison is not necessarily the right word, but there was more compromise in between governments around the world. Now, unfortunately, everything antagonizes people. The reality is information is spread so freely and oftentimes such misinformation that it fosters hate. It leads to maliciousness and violence, and people are less likely to compromise or otherwise collaborate in order to work together for a common goal. It is surprising to me, though, Robin, and kind of along that same vein, that fundamentally, when something happens within a country or around the world that is disastrous, if you will, or tragic, that seemingly everyone can put down everything else and just for a moment and focus in and offer some sympathy and comfort. So that gives me hope that we as people, as humans becoming, that there's still hope for us. But outside of that, if you just look at the politics in our country, even in other countries at times, to me, there's a lack of hope. All you see is antics and foolishness and bickering and fighting, but no real, hey, this is how we can make our country better. This is how we can make, the people who live here better. There's no real conversation to that point.
I think just hearing you say that gives me hope. I think that the fact that I feel like that, you feel like that, there'll be other people who feel like that. If you look at big things that have happened, so 9/11, that had a huge impact in bringing people together. In fact, most probably exactly the opposite from what the aim of the perpetrators was.
Mm-hmm.
It actually brought people together, and that year I remember it really well because it's only 2 or 3 weeks after I was in Spain at a place called Nerja, and I met some Americans,
Mm-hmm.
and they wouldn't stop buying us drinks because they said we were, the Brits were the only people who supported them. We were straight there. We were, um, the hangover was just awful. It was really bad, and I'm sure I must have had some bad tapas. At least that's what I told my wife. But yeah, it was quite a night. I still remember it, and that was what, God, 24 years ago. So 23 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so yes, but they were full of the positivity of being committed to each other and stuff like that. And I think that's the effect it had. And there will be other things that bring the world together
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
sporting events can do as well. Things
Mm-hmm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics and the World Cup. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got the World Cup in America. Nick. Sorry, not the World Cup. You've got the actually it's the World Cup in America as well. The Olympics are in LA, aren't they? So that'd be
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
That's
Um,
going to be very interesting. Very interesting. So that's going to be exciting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, when it came to the UK, not only did we, I am English, so did we really pull it off? It just lifted everyone. It lifted everyone completely, and it was a really, really
Mm-hmm.
special event.
Mm-hmm.
And we still can look back and go, no one's opening ceremony has quite been quite like that. I mean, we did a pretty good job, uh, but we're good at that kind of thing, I think. And it was a nice time to be in the UK and be British. So which was quite special. So going back to we mentioned ages ago your your trucking company and
Mm-hmm.
your 18-wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
I can see you behind an 18-wheeler actually driving one. I can just picture. Um, what went wrong?
So I'd probably say a number of things, Robin. One. One of the things I tell people all the time is what I should have did, I didn't do, which is the first thing that I did with that truck was I wanted somebody else to drive it. I didn't want to drive it. So I put somebody else in the truck to drive. And that person didn't want to work. I mean, I had a guy that drove it, and I leased it on with a company that did regional routes. So there were sometimes, they kind of cover the southeast region, if you will, of the U.S. So up to Virginia and out a little bit towards Texas, and even still now, I know people still that run these trucking lines and stuff. You can get out, you can get a load in or out from Texas, fairly often, maybe down to Florida, depending upon the season, up to Virginia, according to what you're hauling. But short version, those are kind of where the routes were. And on occasion, you'd run out of time because you only drive for a certain amount of time before you mandated you had to rest.
Yeah,
So if
yeah,
you ran out of time, then at that point in time, you had to stop and you had to rest, which means that you might not make it home. And this particular driver wanted to be home all the time. And that didn't happen all the time. We had an instance or two where they, got somewhere to get unloaded, couldn't get unloaded when they arrived, and then they had to wait. So then when they waited out their time, and then they couldn't drive home. They had a time, they timed out. And, after probably, I think maybe about the third or so time, of him having to stay out, it wasn't too many, but, of him having to stay out, he just I'm not gonna do this, and he left my truck, man. He parked my truck at the terminal and left it. I had to go get my truck.
But
So,
isn't that a bit of a common story? I mean, I hear so many people that I work with. We employed the wrong person,
oh
you
God,
know,
yeah.
and I can't find the right person. That's why I can't grow my
Hmm.
company. And one of the exercises I do with people is actually sit down with them and go through all
Hmm.
the staff they've got, and we score them, the scoring system.
Hmm.
And surprising how many people come out of that meeting and go, right, I've got to get rid of some people because
Hmm.
they've been working with them, but they haven't really actually sat down and thought about them, gone, are they the right people for me?
Hmm.
And we employ people that don't share what I call core values.
Fair.
So don't share your core values. So your core value obviously is working hard. Well, obviously
Hmm.
didn't share that core value.
Hmm.
Mate, and being providing a good service might not share that core value. So straight away
Hmm.
you've employed someone who doesn't share your core values. It's not going to work.
And that's very, yeah, you're spot on with that. Because that's something even today that I still go through. Because one of the things that we are, sometimes as either business owners or, we're the visionaries. So like when you meet someone, you engage with someone and are considering bringing them in to be a part of your company, or your endeavor, your enterprise, sometimes we have greater hope for them than they either have for themselves or that they're willing to realize. So we sometimes invest in the people and find out, well, we invested in the wrong person, altogether. And unfortunately, and it should be a measure. Like, prime example, Robin, we made some adjustments in my current business over the last 12 months. We have terminated, several people. We brought on some new people. But we technically still left gaps, meaning we terminated more than what we've hired. But I'm looking at our production now, and our production is much greater than what it was prior. So,
Yeah.
apparently we've terminated and gotten rid of the people that were hindering us. And now we're kind of a little bit more open, and our volume and stuff is up significantly in comparison.
Paul, and that's such a valid point. My father always said to me, he had a construction company, and
Hmm.
we call it development, so it's house building.
Hmm.
Um, so it did both, and I think it grew at one stage, maybe up to about 70. I mean, I was, I was a kid.
Hmm.
Um, but one stage there was a bit of a turn in the market. Everything went a bit, you know, and he got rid of half the people.
Hmm.
And he always says he did more with the half the people than he ever did with all the people,
Hmm.
because he got rid of the people that were just hindering other people from working. And I've come across those
Hmm.
kind of people. I call them assassins.
Hmm.
They don't say anything good about the company. They could do a better
Hmm.
job than the boss.
Hmm.
They know what they're doing, and they stop other people from working. So they're assassins to the business. And there's only one way to get to deal with them. You can't turn them. You have to get rid of them.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yes, there's assassins, and you've got ambassadors, and ambassadors are people that love the company. They think it's amazing. What you do is amazing. They think the team is amazing. And if they're not very good
Hmm.
at their job, train them because they're worth
Hmm.
keeping if you can.
Hmm.
But yeah, no,
Hmm.
he always said that, and he always said that. And when you saw it, I think when you get bigger and when you start kind of churning work through, you need the work to support the people, and it's what comes first, quality or just trying to support the people.
Hmm.
And I think that's quite a challenge for everybody. And then you end up pushing up with people because you've got all this work coming through. You're not making a lot of profit about it,
Hmm.
around it, but you're
Hmm.
putting up people who in the UK they go down the pub lunchtime and come back after a few
Hmm.
pints, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I totally get that, and it sounds like you have done the right thing in your business.
Yeah, yeah, and it's difficult at times. There's some business owners, Robin, this, that are just ruthless, just, no concern for people. But, I explain this and articulate this to every person that we bring on, whether that be an agent who's an independent contractor with us or employee. When I bring you on, you are now my family, which means I'm concerned about yours. So the money that we compensate you here, that I know how important that is. That's to take care of you and your family. That is how you pay your bills. That's how you're going to thrive and, provide for yourself, prepare yourself, if you will, depending upon your age or wherever you are in life, for to go on vacations and retirement and all this other stuff. That is important to me, and because of that, I'm giving to you. I want you to make sure that you're invested in us, that you are committed to what we're doing, that you provide constructive criticism, when necessary, but otherwise that you work internally with us to help us all to achieve our goals. And
That's
if
a
we do
lovely,
that, then we're fully invested.
yeah, that's a lovely speech, and I think that's a fantastic thing to say to people coming on board. I've always said if you can get a team, however big, to get in a rowing boat and all row in the same direction,
Mm, hmm
at the same pace, you can go anywhere. You can go absolutely anywhere. But one person rowing out of rhythm or in the other direction buggers the whole team up.
hmm
So,
hmm hmm
and I think, if you bring people on and you sit them down and you induct them in that way and say, look, you're joining our family now. I think that's a great thing. And I've always believed in that, and that's, I mean, going back to politics, this is where I kind of, capitalism's great. We need a bit of that, but we need a bit of socialism. We need a bit of looking after people as well.
hmm
We need
hmm
that blend, I think.
hmm
And, that the kind of the family orientated businesses rather than massive corporates who don't really give a
hmm
monkeys, is so important, I think, to the future.
Can agree. I agree because there's a vested interest. I can startly remember, I mean, a few times, I remember one time I had 20 some odd agents, 23. Matter of fact, I think one time I got up to 26, but 23 or so agents. I had about 10 to 12 staff. So there was 30 some odd people, around here, if you will. And it was terrible, man. I mean, just the profit margin was trash, nothing. It was, literally we just making money to pay people. And it was just terrible. But, the good I'll take out of that is that, when we had Thanksgiving, when, Thanksgiving came around, and we brought, everybody in, we, brought food in, did a potluck, and just sat down and ate together. And that's important for me, because again, as I try to, get across to the people that we employ and that associate, and partner with us as far as their licensing go, is that that's what we are, that we're going to work together. Yeah, we may disagree on some things, but we're going to have mutual respect. And every time I have an agent or staff member who, is completely, out of sorts, disrespectful, or don't have mutual respect for what we're doing here, as well as handling and working with our agents, that's when they got to go. That's my line. And it's a hard line now. So
Mm,
when an agent or employee is just disrespectful, and essentially, not working to help, but working to destroy, again, an assassin, then, we work to turn the gun, if you will, on
yeah.
them.
I
hmm
think there's a saying, is it something like hire slowly, fire quickly?
hmm
And it's really important. So you talk about Thanksgiving. We don't have that, by the way. You seem to have this kind of long holiday, starts in November and ends in December. It's some to the end of December. But what a lovely celebration. But talk about holidays. So again, something I kind of surmised about America is you don't have a lot of them as an employee. So we get, normally you'd get 21 days plus bank holidays, which is 7, so about 28 days roughly. Some as much as 35 days. If they work for a company and they've worked for a few years and they get beneficial days, and we often have extra days, thrown in for this, that, or the other. And I understand you don't get holiday.
Not like that. I mean, we have, there's always something being celebrated, if you will. But as far as, if what we'll call our banking holidays, which tend to be those holidays that you may not work if the bank in a lot of places the bank isn't working, then okay, we observe that, you observe that. But we have nothing along, nowhere close to that many
Well, we have
in a
we have
year.
7 bank holidays.
On
So
top
bank
of the
holiday.
others?
So
Oh, wow.
the 21 days is holiday entitlement for someone that's employed. Yeah.
Mind
So
blown, man.
if I'm working for someone, haven't done that for a long time.
Uh-huh.
I normally get 21. I think it might be even 23 now. I'm kind of a bit out of touch.
Interesting.
So you're entitled to that. The bank holidays, I think, is a grey area whether you're entitled to them or not. Most companies
Mm-hmm.
give them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you get about 6 weeks off. So that kind of. But we're quite productive, I think, as a country. Even so,
Mm-hmm.
I think those kind of breaks in banking. I know there's a rule that you've got to have 2 weeks off in a row. So in some banks, because their take on is if you're doing anything dodgy, it's going to come out if you're for two
Mm-hmm.
weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, holidays are important, and I think people coming over to the UK from America go, wow, all these
Mm-hmm.
holidays, and
Mm-hmm.
us going over there working, go bloody hell, don't you get a break?
That is interesting. That's interesting. That's extremely interesting. Now, granted, I guess a comparison to that would be, or an observation to make along with that would be that, our society in the US is obviously, directly, more capitalistic. We're capital, you know, listed, driven society, opportunity, you know, making more money, this. And obviously people that make more money, and are engaged in capitalism, as, quote unquote defined, they are taking more time off, they're vacationing more. Whereas I think, what I'm hearing in the UK, you have a lot of government mandates as far as time off and all that stuff. Our government here has no involvement in that, or a lot of
Yeah,
input.
yeah,
I'll say
it,
mandates, input.
yeah. I get that. I mean, because I've grown up with it, it's kind of been the
Hmm.
norm. I mean, I
Hmm.
see the UK as being a capitalistic country. Like I said, I think we need a bit of socialism in there just to balance it out. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, the NHS is really come from that kind of supporting people. I mean, the
Hmm.
NHS is famous worldwide. I go to a hospital, uh, even if I go in an ambulance to a hospital, there's no charge. I can have a major operation, no charge, nothing, not even for the food. Not so it's I don't think a lot of countries have that, and there's no one ever has lost their house in the UK over legal bills. Sorry, over medical bills.
So it's kind of, and Robin, bear with me, in this for just a moment. But all the things that sound good, right? So, like you said, no one's lost their home for this, or you get these number of days off, and all this other stuff. You don't, do this, you don't do that, what have you. All that stuff sounds good. However, on the other side, there's other things that we want that don't coincide with that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
I tell
okay.
and I tell people all the time this one thing. So you want free medical. Well, somebody has to pay for it. In the UK, the government is obviously subsidizing, either owns the system, whatever that looks like. In the US, systems are privately owned. Government does not do healthcare well. They just don't do it. So if you want that existence, then move to where that existence is. If you want to wake up every day at the beach and you can't afford to buy a condo in San Diego, you might want to go buy you a condo in Puerto Rico.
Yeah,
Move to
yeah,
where your affordability is, or where the lifestyle is you want,
yeah.
whatever that might look like. But that is extremely interesting. But that is definitely a stark comparison between the US and the UK as
There,
to capitalism and not.
there's a lot in common. There's a lot in common. The one that really always pisses me off is Apple and McDonald's charge
Uh,
£1 for a burger or 99p for a burger, right,
uh-huh.
in the UK, and it's 99 cents for the same burger in the United States. Apple charge the same dollar rate for a Mac as they do the pound rate. So we're paying like, you know, 30% more than you
for the same product.
Yeah,
Like
it's
you just
just
come over
wrong.
here and buy.
It's
You
just
just come over
wrong.
here and buy it and take it back, right? Just come
Yeah,
over here and buy it
absolutely.
and take it back.
Yeah, but then what happens is our government trouble us for tax. But yeah, so
Ah, that's
but
so
yeah,
funny.
it's it's
Yeah.
just not right. It's just not right. So
It's funny because like when a lot of people that travel to like the Caribbean, they buy rum, they buy alcohol and stuff in the Caribbean because it's lower.
yeah,
It's much lower there, and sometimes you find something that you can't, it's just not imported or it's difficult to find in the U.S. But the same thing when you come back with it, now you got to pay a tax on it if you bring
yeah.
too much. Like
I mean,
come
I think
on.
there is so much in common between the countries, and it's really lovely always to talk to people from America because I'm intrigued. I'm always intrigued in what it's like. I mean, I've been brought up in the UK and I've always known that. I've visited other
Hmm.
countries. I
Hmm.
quite like the laid back Mediterranean kind of vibe with kind of Italy and Portugal, and America's got a completely different vibe. I wouldn't call it, well, the area I visited wasn't exactly laid back. A lot of yippity yay yay, however it is, and have a
Yeah,
nice day,
yeah.
and don't quite
People
get
vacationing. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't quite get the tipping culture. We don't have that over here,
Mm,
but
mm,
it's it is interesting. It is interesting, and I think a lot of it's coming out at the moment with the politics because alongside that is people talking about it, and I think
mhm.
that's really interesting. So really good. Well, it's been lovely speaking to you. I've had a really good conversation, and I've learnt a lot.
Well, thank you, Robin. I've learned a lot too. I definitely can't wait to visit the UK. And I'll say this, kind of as I was thinking about it, because I mean, again, you guys, and that, are far different. But I'm reminded of a verse in a Jay-Z song about if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
So true entrepreneurs and true people with that spirit will find success wherever they
yeah,
go.
yeah. Well, when you come over here, I live in a very traditional British village. So we have a cricket club. Yeah, so cricket's a big part of it. We have a village pub, proper pub, with fireplaces and stuff. And we have that horrible stuff, that warm beer that you hate. So the pub in my village is actually owned by the village. It's one of the first community owned pubs, but it's won awards for the beer for the last 10 years, I think. And we're very privileged because they've just opened another pub. It was an old pub which they've refurbished, and the local estate has bought it. So the estate would be kind of a sir or a lady, or uh, uh,
Mm,
and they bought it. And that's kind of, I might be walking there tonight. It's just over a mile, so I've got a choice of pubs to have my beer in. So but if I always think, not that I'm American, because of films like The Holiday and other films that are based in the UK, you think that all our pubs are like that and like
mm,
like in the films, and actually
mhm,
some of them are. They are. At Christmas, it's amazing. It's really amazing. You kind of you walk there with a kind of that kind of. We don't get that much snow nowadays, but you walk to the pub and there's that kind of light from the windows, and you go in, everyone's
mhm,
singing carols, and it just feels
mhm.
lovely. So I'm sure that when you come over, you'll enjoy your trip. But try and get out the cities because there's lots of other places to see rather than just the big city landmarks. But like I said, it's been lovely speaking to you, and we'll have to
Pleasure's mine.
catch up again and see after the election and see what's changed.
I would love that, Robin. I would love that. Looking forward to it.
That's brilliant, Corwyn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.